video, I'm really just playing the entire AMX 50 line and going over its entire prototype history briefly, or well, not briefly, but roughly. I'm not very good at researching this. I don't normally do this. This is my first time doing this type of video, so I hope it's actually not too bad. During and shortly after World War II, France's only real actual domesticated tank project was the ARL 44, which, to say so the least, was impressive that they managed to do that with what the situation was with France capitulating in 1940. And to be honest, it is still a heavy, awkward sort of stopgap measure tank that did use an obsolete track system from the Char B1 and Char 2C.
Wait, SpongeBob! We're not cavemen! We have technology!
What ended up following this project was, in my personal opinion, and my favorite tank project ever, is one of the most brilliant and highly, really fucking over engineered project, which was doomed by midway through. They kind of realized it, but they don't stop. And so I want to break down the fall and rise of the entire AMX 50 program briefly. I can't really go super in depth. This is the disclaimer in this entire video. Please ignore if I do pronounce something. It sounds horrible. I pronounce something wrong. I'm not good at French. And the photos I did actually get for this video actually took me so long purely due to the fact of it's kind of hard to find prototype tank pictures. And so, from the early stages, the AMX 50 program, or at the time, it was called Project 141, was heavily inspired by German late war tanks, such as the Tiger II, the Panther. It was heavily influenced by those. And so, the first really spirit of the AMX 50 program was the AMX M4, which in War Thunder we know at a roughly battle rating 6. No, not 6.7 anymore. It's 7.0, I believe now. I don't remember. I'm not really looking at it right now. So the actual goal of this project, Project 141, was to make an MBT, main battle tank, not like a light, a heavy, or medium tank. The goal was roughly 30 or so tons. You'll find out shortly. It was not 30 tons. So, beginning in 1945, French engineers drew heavy inspiration from actual captured Panthers and Tigers, and some of the actual earliest blueprints of the AMX M4, like this one right here, has a welded turret, which, in fact, with the hull and everything, this thing looks like a slimmed down King Tiger. The overlapping road wheels, the turret make, the overall look. So originally it was obviously, as we just said, a 30-ton fast tank with a good gun. The Cold War kind of showed how tank development went, where everything is becoming heavily armored extremely fast. So the 30mm frontal armor was upscaled to 80mm to the front plate because this bad boy was not surviving anything. And you remember the small detail about how we said in a little you'll find out that it was in fact not 30 tons. Yeah, the weight of this tank already is now above 50 tons. And so to actually offset the weight of this huge weight increase, they abandoned the welded turret in favor of a French design classic, in my opinion. Oscillated turret with an autoloader. And in 1949, a singular prototype of this exact setup, 80mm front plate and everything, was delivered. Shortly after, the AMX M4, in the same year as we left off, prototype was built and delivered in 1949. It was actually renamed into our next tank, the AMX 50 100. You may be asking, what does this 100 stand for? It stands for the gun. Instead of the 90mm, it is now a 100mm cannon. What they did with this was they took the whole of the original M4 prototype, gave it a new turret, and that new turret housed this new 100mm gun. And thus, the official name of AMX 50 100 was born. Then, after they've done this, on the prototype, they have little blueprints. Instead of the 80 millimeters on the current prototype for the front plate, they upped it to 90 millimeters. Why? I have no clue. And they actually built an entire second prototype. Okay, also, instead of just the front plate, they also did beef up a little bit of the rest of the chassis. How could we expect this? Taking heavily influence from a German tank, the massive weight of this new armor brought upon a new problem again. The German Maybach HL295 engine. That was the problem. In theory, this thing is meant to be able to hit 1,000 to 1,200 horsepower. This is very, very similar engine to that on the Tiger II, just slightly bigger, I believe, and this thing is turbo. This thing got turbo. But, like the German engines of World War II, on the big beefy heavies, it never actually produced this much horsepower. It was either overheating or self-detonating itself. And in actual testing, this engine for the French rarely produced even 850 horsepower ever, like usable horsepower before, because of the risk of it exploding. This beautiful line of tanks in this photo here, you'll see they actually the two prototypes actually featured in a parade. I'm so sorry, I'm actually gonna attempt to pronounce this. 1950 Bastille Day Parade. And if you actually look at the photo, you'll actually notice those two bad boys look identical. I'll circle it. Okay, my microphone cut out for this section for some reason, but basically the whole thing is, if we look at what I've circled, the two tank turrets, you'll notice they're different, which is fully true. They're different. The one on the left is the exact one from War Thunder, actually. It is the Lorraine 40T style of the turret, and the one on the right, in War Thunder, you'll find that turret in the Soma SM. Basically, the actual AMX 50 was meant to have the one on the right's turret instead. NATO intelligence realized a harsh reality. The French standard with this 100mm cannon with kinetic rounds was fucking useless against the sloped and piked armor of Soviet IS-3s and T-54s. And why it took 5 years to finally be like, hey, this is not going to hurt an IS-3 at this point. Bear in mind, the IS-3 has been out for 5 years at this point. It featured in the end of the war parade for the Soviet Union in World War II, so NATO intelligence was kind of slacking here. Do you want to know what the French's reaction was? It's like the American reaction for tanks, or well, Germans. Put a bigger gun on it. The French's plan was put a new 120mm cannon onto the AMX 50. This finally brings us to our first variant with the 120mm cannon. The actual name of this bad boy is the AMX 50 120 TOA, or well, bracket TOA 120. You may ask, what does the 120 stand for again? The gun. And if you're wondering what TOA 120 actually stands for here, it's the turret. It's like the name of this turret, because as you'll see, there's more. The French ran into this problem. You can't just throw this massive 120mm gun into this low-profile oscillated turret. So, they made the new one, the TOA 120. And when I say this thing was big, I mean 1.68 meters for most people in the world, and for Americans, 5.5 feet tall. Just the turret. The turret by itself is 5.5 feet tall. Not the basket, not the turret basket, what you see above the chassis. And so, the entire height of this new tank was 3.5 meters or 11.5 feet. This tank is a full story tall now. And so, this thing was actually slapped onto the current AMX 5100 holes for the two prototypes. So, the, how do I put this? That poor second prototype of the AMX 5100 was getting bullied in 1953 with this thing. This thing was actually so heavy that it was top heavy, the suspension was being overstressed, this thing was dying. These 120mm shells or a bit too heavy for this early version of this drum autoloader. And unsurprisingly, this specific configuration was cancelled in 1953 to 1954. So I'm going to actually say this here. If we look at these photos here, these were some of the harder ones to find. You can see this bad boy. You can see the giant turret. That barrel is long as hell. And what we recognize, the AMX 5100 chassis. There was only one version of this prototype ever built. It no longer exists, I believe. I really could not tell you. And there's actually another turret design that was proposed for this one. There's many, but this is one that truly struck my interest. It is actually the you may be looking at this and you may have quickly thought this is the American M103 turret. It's not. This is a French design for a new turret. That's surprising, I know. And then this version was actually tested quite a decent bit. And this is probably my favorite photo of this tank, is because this one gives you the scale perspective of how tall this thing is and how funny it looks. Like, it looks really funny right now with how comically tall it is. And guess what? They got another new problem. Protection. In 1954 to 1955, the French developed a brand new hull for this. And this picture, you may actually recognize it very little bit. This photo of the AMX-50 Surblind in testing. And you may be wondering, what a weird hull. Surprisingly, and actually unsurprisingly at the same time, the French took inspiration from the very vehicle that forced them to pick this 120mm giant cannon, the Soviet IS-3 with its famous pike nose front. And you may also wonder, what does Surblind mean? It translates to up-armored. Guess what? We have another problem. This shit's heavy again. This thing now weighs a monstrous 64 tons. This is a crushing 64 tons. This is the same engine I'd like to mention that every version has. That poor Maybach engine is not handling it. During testing, what was happening was the gearbox would shear itself, tear itself apart. The tracks wore down at an alarming rate, and during its actual prototype phase of testing, it lived in a maintenance shed more than the actual testing ground, which is kind of sad if you ask me. And actually, during these trials, you may be like, that turret looks identical to the TOA 120. And you'd be goddamn right. And so what they did was used the old turret they already had built in this newly made hull. The actual turret of the Surblind is called the TOB turret, as in Turret 2. I don't believe Turret 2 was ever made. And not much happened with this version. This one was kind of abandoned. I don't think this one exists anymore either. And the only other photo we have of it is the photo of its hull coming out of the factory. Sometime down the line, a few years later after the Surblind failed, the final and ultimate version of this program was built in 1958, the French Surbase. Ignore the horrendous pronunciation, most likely, I know. Surbase translates to roughly to lowered or slammed. The reason it do that is the skimmed down, lighter version of the previous one. It really took the French almost a decade at this point to finally realize, this is not a main battle tank in MBT. This is not all-purpose. This is a heavy tank. And instead of the welded pike nose, they actually made a cast hull, which you'll see in the photos. This one is in a museum. This one photos were easy to find. And then I found some niche, cool photos of it before restoration and testing. And this thing was a lot shorter than the pike nose. This thing, though, it was called slammed and slimmed down for a reason. Trying to make it lighter and shorter, because this thing has a giant profile. And guess what? We have another new turret. A brand new turret called Turrel D, or, well, literally just means Turret D. Fourth version of turret in this series of tanks that has been built. It was built to fit this low profile hull compared to the Pike nose better. It sat lower in the chassis ring, the turret ring, and it plainly used, because at this point you're years after the other one, you now have access to lighter and stronger alloys to fix the fact that this thing is still technically really tall and really top heavy. And this was actually the most balanced version, and the miracle of this redesign, it actually managed to slash off 6 full tons from the 64 originally down to 58 while packing the same heavy 120mm gun. Brand new feature that this new advanced turret has is an autoloader with a 2 9-round drum magazine in the rear bustle, giving it a massive ready-to-fire rack, 18 rounds. Keep in mind, this is an autoloader, so this is firing faster than your typical loader. So this beautiful tank called the Cerbasi was a mechanical triumph, but this thing has arrived way too late by now. This is early 1958. Early anti-tank guided missiles, actually, ATGMs, high-velocity heat-FS rounds, fin-stabilized rounds. These things have been in production for quite some time now, or starting to be in production more often. But like the French kind of were like, this makes our new heavy armor tank obsolete. And so the French, realizing that a fast, lightweight tank with the same firepower was the future, French finally, officially, fully canceled my favorite and most beautiful program called the AMX-50, and they decided to build the new agile AMX-30 instead. From a German-inspired medium tank to a 64-ton steel wall, and finally to a sleek autoloading masterpiece, the AMX-50 program remains one of history's greatest what-ifs. If you personally ask me myself right here, I say it's the greatest what-if. If you enjoyed this semi-detailed look at French armor, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It means a lot to me. Let's hit 50. I want that goal of 50. At the time of I'm recording, I'm at about 44 to 45 subscribers.